November 24th, 1971. Night falls over the forests of the Pacific Northwest. Rain lashes against the windows of a Boeing 727 flying through turbulent clouds. Somewhere inside that plane is a man holding $200,000 in ransom money. Moments later, the aircraft's rear staircase lowers into the freezing air. Wind howls, the lights flicker, and then he jumps. No parachute trail is seen, no body is found, no trace of the man ever appears again. More than 50 years later, investigators still ask the same question. Who was D.B. Cooper, and how did he vanish without a trace? Earlier that day, at Portland International Airport, a man in his mid-40s walked calmly to the ticket counter. He wore a dark suit, a white shirt, a thin black tie. He looked like any businessman traveling before Thanksgiving. The man purchased a one-way ticket to Seattle under the name Dan Cooper. The flight was Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305, a short 30-minute trip. He paid $20 in cash. No luggage, no passport, no suspicion. But within hours, that quiet passenger would become the most famous skyjacker in history. After boarding the Boeing 727, Cooper took seat 18C near the back of the aircraft. The plane lifted off at 2:50 p.m. Shortly after takeoff, Cooper called over a flight attendant named Florence Schaffner. He handed her a folded piece of paper. At first, she assumed it was just a phone number, something male passengers often slipped to flight attendants. She placed it in her purse without reading it. Cooper leaned closer. Calmly, almost politely, he whispered, "You'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Inside the note were simple instructions. He demanded $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck waiting in Seattle. Then Cooper opened his briefcase slightly. Inside were 8 red cylinders connected by wires. It looked exactly like a bomb. The flight attendants quickly alerted the cockpit. Within minutes, the pilots contacted air traffic control. The FBI was notified. But Cooper remained calm. He lit a cigarette, ordered a bourbon and soda, and stared quietly out the window. The plane circled over Washington State for 2 hours while authorities gathered the ransom. Passengers on board had no idea what was happening. They were told there was simply a minor mechanical delay. Meanwhile, on the ground, the FBI scrambled to prepare the cash. $200,000, all in $20 bills. The serial numbers were carefully recorded because authorities believed they would eventually catch the hijacker. They had no idea they were about to lose him forever. At 5:39 p.m., the plane finally landed in Seattle-Tacoma Airport. The aircraft taxied to a remote part of the runway. Outside, FBI agents watched through binoculars. A single ground crew member approached the plane carrying the ransom money and parachutes. Cooper instructed the crew carefully. No sudden movements, no tricks. Once the money and parachutes were delivered, Cooper released all 36 passengers. Only the flight crew remained. The plane was refueled, but Cooper wasn't finished. Cooper ordered the pilots to take off again. His instructions were oddly specific. He demanded the plane fly at 10,000 feet at a slow speed of 170 knots, with the landing gear partially deployed and the rear staircase ready to lower. The destination, Mexico City. But the aircraft didn't have enough fuel, so they planned a refueling stop in Reno, Nevada. At 7:40 p.m., the plane lifted off again into the night. But something about Cooper's plan puzzled the crew. Why the rear staircase? Why the low altitude? And why the parachutes? The answer was about to become clear. About 30 minutes into the flight, Cooper ordered the flight attendant Tina Mucklow to join him in the cabin. He began assembling one of the parachutes. Bundles of cash were tied to his body. He removed his black tie and left it behind on the seat. The plane rattled in heavy rain. Wind roared outside. Then Cooper gave his final instruction. "Tina, go to the cockpit and don't come back." She hesitated. He smiled calmly. "Everything will be fine." She walked forward and locked the cockpit door behind her. The crew never saw him again. At 8:13 p.m., something unusual happened. Inside the cockpit, the pilots noticed the aircraft suddenly lurch upward. The tail dipped. An indicator light showed the rear staircase had been deployed. Somewhere in the darkness behind them, D.B. Cooper jumped. He leapt into freezing rain, 200-mile-per-hour winds, pitch-black wilderness. Below him stretched miles of dense forest across Washington state. No trained skydiver would choose conditions like these, yet Cooper disappeared into the storm. When the plane landed in Reno, Nevada, authorities rushed aboard. The rear stairs were open. 2 parachutes were missing. The hijacker was gone. The FBI immediately launched a massive search operation. Hundreds of soldiers and agents combed through forests. Helicopters scanned the wilderness, but they found nothing. No parachute, no body, no trace of the man ever appears again. More than 50 years later, investigators still ask the same question. Who was D.B. Cooper, and how did he vanish without a trace? 9 years later, in 1980, a young boy named Brian Ingram was digging in the sand along the Columbia River. Suddenly, he uncovered something strange. Bundles of rotting cash, $20 bills. When authorities checked the serial numbers, they made a shocking discovery. The money matched the D.B. Cooper ransom. Nearly $6,000 had been buried along the riverbank. But investigators couldn't explain how it got there. Did Cooper die in the wilderness? Did the money wash downstream? Or was someone deliberately planting evidence? The mystery deepened. Over the decades, investigators examined hundreds of suspects. Some were former military parachutists, criminals, aircraft experts. One suspect, Richard McCoy, performed a nearly identical hijacking months later. Another, Kenneth Christensen, worked for the airline itself. Yet none could be conclusively proven to be Cooper. In 2016, after 45 years, the FBI officially closed the case, not because it was solved, but because there were simply too many dead ends. Today, the legend of D.B. Cooper still fascinates investigators. He is the only unsolved skyjacking in American history. Some believe he died during the jump. Others believe he escaped and lived the rest of his life in secret. On a stormy night in 1971, a quiet passenger boarded a plane. Hours later, he jumped into darkness, carrying $200,000, and the world has never seen him again.